Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Apex Hours session. And we want to thank Amit from the Apex Hours team, and myself, Bill, and John Pernock are going to be discussing and presenting and demoing Experience Cloud. So with that said, my name is Jason Norat, and ultimately, my background comes in the Salesforce ecosystem from education cloud as well as manufacturing cloud, and have done a lot of work in various verticals for Experience Cloud. So that's partner portals, community portals, and everything in between. So with that said, I'm going to kick things over to my other co-presenters, John Pernock.
Hey everybody, my name is John Pernock. I've been working in the Salesforce ecosystem for almost about 10 years now. I have 3 certifications and I have worked across many different verticals with Experience Cloud. I've done quite a few different partner portals, and I will turn over to our next presenter, who is Bill.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bill Apostolakis. I'm a senior Salesforce consultant here at Eigen X. I'm a 5-time certified, have been in the Salesforce ecosystem since 2017, self-taught, and have had a lot of experience with nonprofits and large organizations there. So that's me.
Perfect. Yes, I've had the pleasure of working with Bill and John at Eigen X for a few years now. So excited to chat through a little bit more about what Experience Cloud is, the license type, the security, as well as demoing some of the portal creation itself, the grant management piece of this. Bill will talk about that specifically. John will then get into the field service component of this and the add-on portion. And then we'll talk a little bit about the best practices when implementing some of the new summer 23 release features, as well as questions that can be put into the comments section when the video is posted. So without further ado, we've got what is Experience Cloud. So this is something that is really a great platform for public-facing websites. So you may have gone to Experience Cloud websites for some sort of e-commerce website or anything of that nature, and not even realize that you were leveraging a Salesforce website. You also have login-based websites. So that could be a customer portal, that could be a partner portal, could even be an employee portal. So that's something that's behind a layer of security, just like you would traditionally log in. Maybe in an education use case, you would be logging in to view your grades or view progress on an application and things of that nature. Or in a manufacturing vertical, that might be more specific to you're a partner of that manufacturer and you would like to check whether it's an opportunity that might be in the system that you're working jointly with the folks at the actual manufacturer, or you are collaborating with them, whether that's through the use of Chatter or other native Salesforce tools that are also able to be exposed in Experience Cloud. And then the other use case of being an employee, maybe going in and checking critical information about your onboarding process or certain things, filing a case, things of that caliber. So it's scalable. Experience Cloud, that is one of the lovely things about the platform and the product, is that it's scalable. It really is quite extendable now, and we'll talk a little bit more about it later, but it obviously gets the releases that Salesforce does 3 times a year. So we'll chat a little bit more about that. And there's a lot of really good external support and documentation and videos that are out there. As you can see here, we won't click into it, but you can see that through YouTube and other series like Apex Hours, you are able to learn more about this. This video in particular right here is pushed out by Salesforce. So these are regularly occurring videos and documentation. So again, what is Experience Cloud? It is a digital experience that lets customers focus and get a 360-degree view when used completely. So whether that partner community or the customer community or experience or the employee community. So there's a few different avenues that a lot of folks like to go when they start talking about Experience Cloud and really what it is. I like to start with the license types because, as I mentioned before, you have a customer community, you have partner community, and then you've got that more employee-based one. So some of the key things, if you are a customer and you're watching this video that we're doing today, you might be wondering, what type of license do I need? Well, there's a few things, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in a few moments, but there's a few things that you'd like to consider, right? Is this something that is truly, is this a customer that's coming onto the website and maybe purchasing something, or they need to see their own account information after they log in, or if it's public facing, just purchasing that item or that product that may exist. So there's things to think about of controlling over branding, themes, reporting, dashboards. And then on the other side of it, when you have a partner community, it may be a bit more straightforward because you can just purchase the partner community license and not have to decipher between a community plus versus a community license. And then for these external app license and channel license, these are a bit more in the weeds. Once you've kind of got a good foothold and you've worked with your Salesforce account executive, you can get a little bit more into, do I need these certain different types of licensing that are a bit atypical in most of the use cases that we see. So we'll talk more about this in a moment and some of the tools and flow and documentation that can help you make that decision. Here's one particular matrix that does a really nice job of describing, okay, if you need a, let's say, the ability to see accounts, assets, contacts, orders, etc., you can get any of the license types. But if you're looking at leads, campaigns, opportunities, and quotes, which is definitely more traditional for a partner community or a channel account or channel type community user, then you're going to have to go after a partner license type. Now, cases and things of that nature are very native Salesforce. That's something that you can also get in everything except for that external app license type. Some of the really key considerations that we see a lot of folks, whether they're the customer or they're a ISV or they're a consulting partner or anyone really involved in that decision-making process, is the reports and dashboards and what is necessary. So yes, a customer community license may be a little bit more inexpensive, and I'll show kind of the latest Salesforce public-facing pricing in just a moment. But if you do not need to view reports and dashboards as that user, you could go with the customer community login license type. Or if you do need that, then you're going to have to go with the plus customer community plus license type. So these are just some things to reference and keep track of. And if you're working with a consulting partner, or if you are just that lead on the decision-making, things to consider, right? So hopefully everyone, regardless of what type of user you are, decision maker you are, can look at this and get some benefit out of it. So as I mentioned, another way to view it is you're able to look at, if you're an admin, you might be more curious about the sharing sets and the sharing rules and things like that. So that's another decision that you'll have to make and determine, okay, we need to have leverage sharing sets. That way we're maximizing the efficiency of our org and leveraging the right resources and right security model to extend into the community. So not only do they need reports and dashboards, but we need to leverage sharing rules. That way we can control things a bit more granularly. And we need to leverage sharing sets. That way we're not creating 15 different sharing rules when we don't need to. Things like that. considerations of custom objects and exposing those to the community is definitely something to look at as well. So if you're using standard objects like accounts, opportunities, contacts, cases, things like that, it's not going to count against you. But the moment you start exposing some of these custom objects, let's say you have some sort of junction object that you need to expose that is a relationship between the contact and a product, then you may have to start considering, okay, I've only got 8 custom objects left to use or 9 custom objects left to use. And I may have to start thinking about the external app license type as well. So just things to consider. And these are some questions on the left-hand side of this that you may want to ask when you're going through this process. And here is another graphic of just, okay, do I need a public facing site or do I need a login based site? So, and then you work your way down, right? Is this something that, I need to see campaigns, leads, or, do I need to, think more about the reporting and dashboarding side of things? So these are just tools. Feel free to reference these, screenshot these, just think about it a bit more, because getting a project for Experience Cloud off the ground has a lot of considerations, right? Your wireframes, your, business requirements, what's necessary, but these can help lead those conversations regardless of who you are in the project and what your role is. So with that said, those were the types, but there is also the idea of when you have a login-based community, there's member licenses and logins licenses. So member licenses are for active users who log in frequently into the community. So let's say this is in the education vertical, and you have students that might be checking things daily, and they need to check their grades, they need to check what's due, assignments, things like that. That might be a better use case for a member license. Login license, maybe that's more financial services. Folks are probably only looking maybe once or twice a month, or if it's something that's like a yearly process or a, biannual or bi-monthly process, you could start evaluating, okay, the login license type might be a little bit easier because they're logging in less frequently, and that model might be more conducive to what we budgeted for the year and how much we're willing to spend in this Experience Cloud engagement and effort. So those are some things. We obviously have an example here just to kind of help those, try to figure out what is the best way. And typically speaking, the Salesforce account executives really help through that and help guide it, but it's better to be knowledgeable when going into those conversations or just evaluating things. Even if you already have Experience Cloud, right? You can have a hybrid of the two. So there's different things to consider. The cost definitely subject to change, but these were the latest numbers that we were able to pull off the public Salesforce website with the link below. So definitely reference those. And now into more of the fun security considerations. So I talked a little bit about sharing roles and sharing sets, but ultimately this is something that everyone should be thinking about, whether you're an admin, whether you're just a power user, or you're leading the project from a budget standpoint, right? It's who should see this, the different types of security. John and Bill will likely touch on this, but there's an admin component that happens within Salesforce CRM. So your Salesforce admin is much more familiar with that UI. Then there's also the idea of the actual Experience Cloud builder and the area for my workspaces. So within my workspaces, you have builder, moderation, content management, gamification, dashboards, and admin. So admin, you're able to do a lot of things with security in there. You can determine whether it's a public facing site. You can get more granular with who sees what. In builder, you can create audiences, so that way, and page variations. That way, when I'm looking at a specific site and I'm a certain type of user with a flag on my user within Salesforce, I may see something different because of my department than someone else who logs into the same site but they're in different departments. So, things like that. Moderation, you can actually promote users in the system to only be administrators for moderation. And there's different levels of that. So that way they can monitor the website, whether it's, let's say it is a company that has a knowledge base built onto Experience Cloud. So if you bought a new grill and you go to the public facing website and you have questions about the grill, you could search that serial number, find the forum and the product, and then you can see what people are saying about that. It might be beneficial for that company to have a moderator of the knowledge site. Content management very similarly goes with moderation, whether it might be branding and just kind of making that UI and UX experience a bit better for the users. Gamification is something that you can promote those who are active in that knowledge base. Dashboards is definitely more admin and also very helpful for those trying to figure out, okay, is this Experience Cloud site being used? Is this, was our investment into this beneficial? Or, do we need to look at different avenues? What pages are getting the most views? All of that, you get a lot of standard out-of-the-box dashboards. I talked about sharing sets, sharing rules, org-wide defaults, roles, and then the account relationship data sharing role. So sharing sets, you can kind of see on the right-hand side, those I mentioned being part of the consideration for what kind of license type you need. A lot of times we see, if you're looking in that customer model, a lot of folks go with the customer community plus because not only can you use, your object access via the profile, external sharing, but then you can start leveraging role hierarchy access, sharing rules, account relationships, sharing sets. Whereas the customer community, you don't get to leverage those sharing rules. And admins watching this might be thinking, okay, I know about sharing rules. I don't know as much about sharing sets. Sharing sets, a bit more limited, but do a great job when the use case is correct with that. Org-wide defaults, that's just what you may have in the org. So an architect viewing this might be thinking, all right, our org-wide defaults are set to private or controlled by parent or public, and those need to be considered. Obviously, those things in conjunction with sharing sets, sharing rules, and roles, along with this new term that you might be seeing, which is account relationship data sharing rule. That's really helpful when you're looking at, multiple distributors. So that's a lot of times you see that in the manufacturing vertical of multiple distributors and how do we do this without creating too many sharing sets, sharing rules? Well, you can do it with this account relationship data sharing rule. In the bottom right visual, you'll see that. Logins needed, I talked about this, but ultimately when you go into workspaces, you do have that admin console. And then when you go into Builder, you get to, take a little bit more. You can, whether it's a public facing site or guest user profiles and things like that, setting navigational topics. So that way when someone searches for or wants to easily access a tab or search for something, being able to set all of that within here is critical. Then we've got the commerce portal path is just an example here. Do your customers need access to standard case object to log cases? Things like that. You're asking the question, and everyone involved in a project and getting it off the ground or enhancing the project, whether it's already went live and you're just making enhancements, should be asking these type of things, right? Do I need to start leveraging maybe a commerce portal, which is an extension of Experience Cloud? There's B2B, there's B2C, and D2C. So you kind of have these three different types of commerce communities. So if you go to a website and it's a traditional e-commerce website, but it might be for business to business, business to consumer, and direct to consumer. So those are the type of things that may help guide that conversation because there is different pricing when you're working with the account executives and the reps on what this looks like. And then CMS, so you've got your content management system and what is, can I use this to control all the content and branding and understanding the different channels and communication? Well, that can all be managed within the Salesforce CRM side of the house. So you can deliver that content quickly. You can push it to Experience Cloud. It has a connection, native connector that you're able to leverage to do just that. So you may not need another external system. You can do that within CMS. It has its own pricing with it, and it's definitely key and has been successful since launching. And you can see even on the right-hand side, it's within the 9-digit hamburger icon. You can type in Salesforce CMS if you have it, and then you can control everything from there. General use cases, we discussed a lot of this, but member, volunteer, applicant fundraising portals, self-service portals, B2B, B2C, D2C, already discussed, and then public-facing websites. So these are the key things: security considerations, the license types, and the types of use cases that you can really sink your teeth into, whether it's the most basic public-facing website with just a few knowledge articles, or it's something a little bit more comprehensive where you're looking at distributors and partners and things like that. Experience Cloud is truly a website that allows you to have that flexibility. And with that said, you've got those different products just in a different layout here. It's the different industry clouds all leverage it in some way, shape, or form. So you've got Education Cloud, Manufacturing Cloud, Health Cloud, and so forth. And then you have your product-specific ones, like I was mentioning before. CRMA might be using it, or Field Service, which we'll talk on. John will discuss that in a little bit. With that said, I'm going to kick things over to John from our team. And John, feel free to unmute and take it away for sharing.
Not a problem. I'm just going to share my screen. Let me know when you guys can see it. Good. So we're going to talk kind of about how easy it is to get started with a digital experience within Salesforce. I have a brand new dev org right in front of us. Nothing has been configured yet. So we're going to kind of start at the basics, start at the beginning, and kind of walk you through how easy it is to get started with a digital experience overall. So from your home screen, you can go to your little gear icon, as the admins will recognize, and click on Setup. And we'll wait for that to come up. And then in your quick find box in the top left, we'll search for digital experiences. And then, so right now you'll see this menu only has one option for settings. And that's because digital experiences is not enabled in this org yet. So first step we'll start with is just by checking our box. You'll see it talks about our sample experience URLs. So you'll see down here, it kind of talks about, our URL. We're not using a, my domain URL right now. So it's kind of just the general Salesforce URL. And then it kind of shows you kind of different / endings that you can put onto it when you start creating the site. So I'll click Save here. It's going to talk about record access for roles and how that gets created. So for partner community users, there's kind of like a 3-level role hierarchy that gets created. That's kind of how they deal with moderation and things like that. So now once I click Save and I click OK, our screen will refresh again. And then over here on the left, now you'll see under digital experiences, we now have a lot more options than we did before. So we're kind of enabled here. So now what we'll do, it brings you here to all sites. We'll click New, give it a second to load. And it's going to kind of start asking us for some basic information to get the digital experience started. So right now it's going to ask you kind of about the different experience that you need and the kind of the different theme. And there's a lot of information kind of out there on these different themes and kind of what you can do between building your own microsites, B2C commerce. We kind of touched on that earlier with Jason. Customer service, account portals. These are kind of guides on kind of what you would like to do. I'm going to start with a partner central portal. I've done quite a number of partner portals, so I'm probably the most familiar with this. And even don't worry about your theming on this. You can change this all later on. So it's going to ask us for a name. So I'm going to call this the Eigen X test portal. And it's going to ask me if I want to create a URL. So I'm going to call this test portal, and I'm going to click create. So now we're going to kind of sit here for like a minute or two while this does some configuration behind the scenes. But basically, this is setting up the digital experience. That is all the information you need to kind of get that up and running, like at a base level. So once this is done, it'll bring us straight into the builder and we can start configuring the portal. Great, so now that it's done, you can see we're brought into kind of our workspaces for this portal. You can see builder, moderation, content management, admin, dashboards, gamification, and even guided setup, kind of which Jason has talked about earlier. I would say your best bet would be to use the guided setup because that'll kind of walk you through step-by-step instructions. I'm going to dive straight into the builder because there's a couple of things that I kind of wanted to touch on while we're in here. So you'll see straight off, it brings you right into our kind of WYSIWYG builder. So kind of drag and drop, you can kind of see like global search box, objects you need an autocomplete results. Like this is kind of where you start to begin your kind of configuration. Up here at the top, you'll find your different pages. You can create pages for specific objects. You can also come in here and look for generic. So if you don't want to create different page layouts for every single object, you can actually use this generic, and this can kind of create the general template layout for basically your record detail list and then any related record list. So you don't have to create a specific one for each. These buttons over here, you'll see we have components. So these are different components that you have to drag into your builder here. We have some things down here for your feed. You can get files. There's, again, gamification for when you're using like a knowledge portal, record information. I mean, we can go on and on about all of these different options that you have here. Next one's going to be theme. So you can change the theme of your digital experience from here. So if I click change theme, it brings up that kind of page with the different theme options that we have. So for instance, I could say, well, I don't like this original theme. I'm going to switch. So I'm thinking I like Webster. It's very visual. We've got a lot of pictures, so we can choose that. You can see you have some screenshots here of different kind of options, and you can even see kind of the mobile experience. So one thing I think we should also touch on here is that every digital experience is basically responsive out of the box. So you're already kind of mobile ready at that point. And I can click activate theme here, and now we have a completely different theme on our Experience Cloud site. And we get some base data, it kind of shows you what it looks like. So there's theming. You can also come in here and change any of the colors that you have. So like your text colors, login colors for the screen. You can come in here and choose your different company logo, and you can also change the background of the login screen, fonts, and then theme settings, kind of just generalized settings here. In regards to the colors, there is also an option where you can go in here, and if you're a developer heavy person like myself, and sometimes these don't always cut it, you can actually come in here and edit the CSS directly. So you can actually put in any custom styling that you would like to be available. Next one's kind of page structure. Most of this is usually locked in, but it's kind of showing you all your different components that you have in all the different kind of content areas within the screen. And then our last one's just settings. So again, we've talked about public access earlier. Guest users can see and interact with the site without logging in. This is unchecked. So basically, if we were to access this experience right now, we would be forced to log in. We would not have any sort of public facing. Our theme, again, configuration options. There's different theme layouts, languages, navigation. So there's a lot of different options that you get. One thing that I wanted to touch on a little bit is audiences and kind of how that works. So, one use case that I ran across was we had a partner portal for 2 different divisions of a company, and each division was completely separate branding, separate logos, separate color scheme, everything. So our goal was to create one experience site with multiple different branding for each of those users. So I'm going to kind of walk you through kind of what that looks like. So for that, I'm actually going to hop back into standard Salesforce, and I'm going to add a field to our user object that I can kind of use to toggle between the different theming. So we had on the use case that I just explained, we had a field coming over from SAP for like an area for each of the basically users that were there. So that area is kind of how we defined our criteria for our audience. Here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a standard pick list. going to call it portal theme. And I'm going to say default. And then I'm going to put red in here. I'm going to use the first value as the standard value. So everybody kind of starts off with default. So I'm going to add this field. I'm going to make it kind of visible across the board. Just going to let it add it to the layouts. So now that we have that drop down, and I come back into the experience builder here, if I refresh, so I could say, for instance, right now we have one navigation menu. I could say edit the default navigation, and we have these different pieces here. If I go over to settings, I can go into navigation and I can actually create another navigation menu, and I could say red navigation. And for my menu structure, I can just add in, I just want them to have access to the contact object, for example here. So I click contact. The cool thing is when you add these tabs, especially for Salesforce objects, you can default the list view that they see right from here. So if you create list views that are only visible to external users on the portal, then you can actually select which one that you would like them to be defaulted right there. So I'm going to save this menu. So now we have the red navigation here, okay? So right now, the default menu for our standard menu on this page is default navigation. So I can actually click personalize here, and it brings me into an audience selection. So I can click in here and say, for our menu, we want to use red navigation and then assigned audience. We don't have another audience in the system right now. So the cool thing is I can click new audience, and I could say red theme. And then it talks about the criteria to meet that. So you can use multiple different pieces from that. I'm going to click user, and I'm going to say portal theme, which is that pick list that we had just created. And I'm going to say when it equals red, and I'm going to click save and assign. So now what happens is if you come in with that drop down selected for red for the theme, then you will get that different navigation here. So the cool thing is you can really target different pieces. So if you have a user that's coming in for sales, you can give them sales navigation. If they are coming in for service and you want them to be case moderators, then you can set it up that way. So you can really kind of keep one set of layouts without having to really create multiple different pages and different variations. Now, speaking of variations, you can actually also create different page variations. So for instance, I want to create a different page variation. I'm going to create a new blank page here that's one single width column. I'm going to call it red home, and I'm going to click create. So now, we have a specific page that's only available for red home. So I can actually go in here, click on the page properties. We see both are unpublished. And you see here for the audience, that regular home variation is for the default audience, and our other one has no audience. So we will click on this people icon up here, and I'll click on red theme, and I can click, and I clicked on the wrong button. So what I'm going to do is click done, and click on the little drop down here, and you see edit audience here is grayed out because that's the default. So that's the audience for everybody. So if I click on the one for red home, we can either set this as the default page variation or we can assign it. So I click assign, it shows me all the audiences I have available. We can also create one. I click on it, and then we see we have an assign button here. So I click assign, and I click done. So now this page is for any of those who are in that audience, and then we have the default audience. Now both are unpublished. So what we're going to do right now is I'm going to publish both. So now we're going to publish the site, and this means that all of our changes are basically getting written. So we'll just take a minute while that goes through. It'll send me an email when it's done. Usually this is pretty quick. And then the other thing that we can also walk through is kind of managing branding sets. So besides audiences and kind of having that kind of show different pieces that you can render on the screens for different user criteria, there's also something called branding sets. So branding sets are basically if you want to have a different logo. So for instance, if you have a partner portal and you have a partner company that logs in all the time, they have plenty of users, you could say, you could brand it to that company and even have it show their logo, which is really interesting. So I can click new branding set here, and I'm going to call it red theme because we're kind of using a red theme here. And I can go in here and I can edit our branding set. So you'll see it says branding set now over here, and you can actually swap which one you're viewing on the screen. And if I come in here, I'm working with my branding set for the red theme. So for instance, I don't need my action color to be green. I want it to be red. And I don't want my links to be blue. I want everything to be red. So I can now see my highlights here, and this is kind of red. You know, we took the rest of the content out. So, you know, you're able to give different, you know, logos for different companies and things like that if you have different branding sets for different things like that. Again, we can assign this to our audience. So I'll again click on Manage Audiences up here. So you see we still have our audience. So now, again, I did the same thing. This screws me up all the time. So we'll click this triangle drop down on this branding set here. Again, it's the same thing as we saw earlier, set to default. So I could say, no, I want this red theme to be the default one or not. Or I can also click on Assign. I can click red theme and I can click Assign. So now that branding set is assigned to the criteria. So basically, if you log in and you have that drop down selected, then it will show the red theme. Otherwise, we're going back to Webster here. So I'll click publish again so that we can see all of our changes get pushed. And we'll just wait for that to tell us that it was all successful. In the meantime, we can create a couple of users. So I'm going to create a couple of accounts here. I'm going to create a test account. And I'm going to add a contact. Just a test contact, and then I'm going to add, use my test email. I'm going to click save. So now I have one account, and then I'm going to create another one. So this one will be the one that's going to be with the red theme. So now we have two accounts and two contacts ready. So one thing we'll see here is that we don't have an enable for partner community yet on here. So what I have noticed with the latest release is that I actually have to go back into Salesforce Classic in order to be able to enable these. And you can bring those buttons into Lightning. You have to do a little bit of configuration for that. So for instance, this test account, I can see now I have a button here in Classic for Manage External Account. I want to enable this as a partner. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the other one. You'll see you get your report here that tells you that if it is partner, list views and things are filtered for it. So now you see we have Manage External Account now, and it says Disable. So those have been all enabled. So then what we also have to do is enable our contacts. So if I come in here to those two contacts we created earlier, I can say enable customer user, enable partner user. So that's kind of back to those license types and profiles that Jason had talked about earlier between customer, customer community plus, and then partner users. I'm going to enable this as a partner user. So now it brings in here and it kind of brings you into your licensing, as Jason has talked about earlier. I'm going to use partner community. And right now, you know, we're going to use the standard partner community user profile that's kind of sitting out there. Best practice kind of says that you should clone the standard profile that you're using for the community. So if it's customer community or customer community plus, partner community, those types of things, those standard profiles are there. You will want to clone these when you are doing the actual implementation. For our instance, we don't really have to worry about that. So for instance, this is our red contacts. We're going to convert them over to be a portal user. And then down here, you can see we have our field. So because they're the red one, I'm going to make this one the red. And then we're going to generate the new password and notify the user immediately. I'm going to click save. It kind of tells you that they'll receive a welcome email, but if you want to prevent, uncheck that box. So I'm going to click OK. Well, we have an issue. So to create or update users for this profile, you have to allow standard external profiles. So for instance, as I said earlier, best practice indicates that you should be cloning these profiles. Out of the box, if you try to use these profiles without a setting, it's going to give you this error message because they don't want you to use these standard profiles. So if we go back into our portal, and we go into administration, and we go to members. So first off, we don't have our partner portal profile enabled here either. So you want to use all of your profiles that you're going to be using for the portal. You want to have them selected and then added. So I'm going to add our 2 partner communities. And then the cool thing is that if you have any permission sets you want, when you create users under these profiles for the community, you can also have specific permission sets applied as well. So now I'm going to go out of here and I'm going to go back to Salesforce setup real quick. Digital experiences, and then we're going to go to settings. So now that method that we were seeing earlier, allow using standard external profiles for self-registration. So normally the setting is always unchecked. And again, it's going to give you a message, kind of as I said earlier, best practice says to clone and then use a newer profile. So I can click save now. So if I go back here to the user we were creating earlier and I try to hit save again, we're gonna get another error. So this is also something else that we should have set up as well when we go to do this, is that it's telling me that my user, the user that I'm using to create our experience users, I have no role. So coming into a clean org, I don't have a role. So I'm going to give myself a role. So now if I go back here, I can go back to this and I can click save and we should be good to go. So now we have a contact and we'll be able to log into the portal. So that's kind of how you can configure this to kind of have it be different experiences for different users with the audiences and branding sets, and how easy it is to just create an experience portal. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Jason and we can keep moving through. So I'm going to unshare my screen there, Jason, for you, and then I'll put us back on mute.
Yeah, no problem. We're actually going to get, I will share my screen, but we're going to kick it over to Bill in just a moment. So ultimately, we've got the grant management piece of this, but also right before that, Bill, feel free to chime in on the uses, benefits, and features, and then I will relinquish control, and you can do what you need to do with the grant management portion.
Thanks, Jason. So John did a great job of showing you basically how easy it is to get up in there. But if you really look at it, he was doing something very basic. And to do something more complex, obviously, will take a lot of time. The beauty of it is that certain packages that Salesforce has, they actually already come with pre-built sites. One of those that I'm going to talk about is in the nonprofit area is called grants management. When a client buys the grant management package, they already know what types of licenses they're going to be getting. The sharing and everything else is already there. And there's this is actually used for grant seekers. So these are a nonprofit could be a grant maker. So they're saying, hey, I have a grant to submit to call for applications, and those are the applicants would be the grant seekers. You can also that site that portal site that comes with this has already gotten applicants and collaborators, external reviewers. But the big benefits of this is that there's no building, it's just configuring. It's all spelled out in Salesforce documentation. Security and sharing is already laid out. You also comes with some pre-built flows, and you can be up and running with a basic portal site within a day. And it's all part of a managed package so that any changes or any updates to the product is automatically done. For the applicant in this grant management package, you can submit applications, track statuses of applications, submit applications, and invite others. Now I'm going to share my screen and just kind of go over a few of the so the grant man, you could basically build this all yourself, because when there's a free add-on called outbound funds, and that's what that all gives you, the basic objects, which is funding programs, funding requests, and that. And you could build a site which may look something like this, but you would be doing that all from scratch. With the grant management package, you get obviously all of the things that you have, but you have a site which looks very different, and the applicant is looking at, these are my grants, and then there's the grant there. They built in reviews. So you can have external reviewers reviewing these applications, and also cases, so that an applicant can post a question there. Some of the beauties of this is that it already comes with some flows already pre-built, which there's one flow that I liked, which is a multi-section application. So you can design the application so that it's done in sections. And then you don't have to build these flows, which it's actually using a subflow, which is calling a grant application launcher. It says, okay, which one it is, but all of that logic is already built in. You don't have to do anything from it. So that's what I really like about these pre-builts, that you can come quick to market very easily, and you have something it's going to work, and yet it's documented too. So I'm going to turn it over to John, I believe.
Yes. If I'm mistaken, Jason.
Yep, no, you are fine. And
yeah.
So
There we go.
basically, if everyone can see my screen, John, the floor is yours.
Sure. So a couple other use cases that I have run through with other different clients is that we had to expose CPQ into a partner portal to allow partners to be able to do quoting and kind of do the whole configuration process. We were able to expose the existing product configurator through CPQ, which is cost price quote. And we were able to expose all of the existing flows, object access, and we were able to expose the product configurator that we've been using for quite a while without really any extra needed code. CPQ comes with specific permission sets for object access and read access for different features built already for customer community licenses and partner community licenses. So all you really have to do is assign these permission sets to the users, and then they get access. So it's really simple. Even if you need to expose that in a digital experience, you can pretty easily, and they already come with pre-built pieces for that. And then for field service, so I've done quite a few field service implementations. And what we have seen is that Salesforce offers an add-on called Appointment Assistant. And Appointment Assistant basically allows, there's code that runs behind the scenes, and then a bunch of pre-built flows, as Bill had talked about earlier, for grants management, that basically do authorization and then kind of give you a widget. So we created a shell community. There's no branding. There's nothing on the pages. And we dropped in a component. And basically what happens is there's a piece of code that runs when a service appointment is created on the field service side that gives a URL back. And we can provide that URL to the customer. We can give the URL in a text message through, digital engagement and things like that. And what that essentially does is gives us public access to give a link to the customer where you can give them checklists on arrival. You can allow them to edit their address. You can even allow them to cancel and reschedule their appointments. And, we were going to dive into a demo next. I'm actually just going to share my screen. I can show you kind of what that looks like overall. So out of the box and unconfigured is this is a component that you just drop in and there's a bunch of features. So right now I have a service appointment within field service for Friday from 2 to 3 for this home assessment, and then it can show me the address of kind of where I'm at. I don't have address editing enabled, so you see I can't edit it here. But there also is a feature where I can leave a note for the technician who's on their way. So I could say, hey, I have a gate, the gate code's 1234. This is how you access it. So that's kind of cool. It kind of gives them a way to kind of communicate back. This will also show once the technician says that they're on their way and they mark it as en route, there's a way that we can also see the technician's location to you and kind of an ETA. So this component can kind of change over the life cycle. The cool thing is you can also cancel appointments and then you can reschedule. The cool thing is I can click reschedule. This uses the Salesforce's field service, the appointment scheduler. So right now it's giving me all my available slots. So I can say I want to move it from tomorrow to today. And then I can just click reschedule now. And then this is all out of the box provided. So, we have a few flows that do it. And then basically I just rescheduled my appointment to today. So it's really easy. And these are just things that are kind of built out of the box that you can get, and then you can customize them as you need to see fit for your use case.
Fantastic. And thanks for sharing that, Bill and John. So with that said, we will just kind of chat through some of the latest and greatest summer 23 release features, which have just recently been pushed to production and sandbox environments. John talked about Aura and LWR sites. So when you're creating that Experience Cloud initially, you now have a bit more comprehensive features that are built within the LWR sites. And then for components within the Experience Builder, the ability for more dynamic components for visibility based off of conditional logic, as well as that show hide action bars details component of this. Developer productivity is something that's been touched on. So for all the developers out there, whether it be Google Analytics integrations, a bit more comprehensive, as well as leveraging Aura components and kind of making the switch to LWR. Those are some of the key things that we saw in this release cycle. Site performance, this is something that everyone should really benefit from, although you may not see too much of it without doing a comparison between what it was before and what it was after. But you can see a few of the different items specifically they were talking about for site performance. So backend changes that Salesforce has made to just increase the efficiency and productivity and reliability of the tool. And then we've got security and sharing. So standard components for self-registration. A lot of the updates, again, were very Aura LWR centric. So those were things to think about. Also the emailing, preventing emails to be sent to an unverified guest user email address. There's some quirks, just like with any product out there, that making sure you're not sending emails and registration emails, things that any admin has probably seen before. But if you're new into the Salesforce ecosystem, with your creating a user from the Salesforce CRM side, making sure that you're unchecking the proper send an email registration link and things like that. Those are things that you want to consider. Not part of the summer 23 release, but definitely a little bit more control over unverified guest users in particular. And with that said, we will kind of just wrap things up. If anyone has any questions about Experience Cloud, any of the add-ons that we talked about, anything in general, feel free to reach out. We've got our contact info on the screen. So feel free to email us or WhatsApp or whatever may be easiest. You can see a little bit about what we do on our website and a little bit more background on us. And I want to thank Bill, John, and I want to thank Amit for having us on Apex Hours. And we're excited to get everyone's feedback in the comments. So thanks again and have a good one.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.